Hello.
Hello there.
Hello there.
Welcome to the podcast of Batman's the 1989 one versus the 2008 one. How they differ and how they're the same and how they're not.
The podcast of dreams
The podcast of
and destiny.
Memes.
Dreams,
something.
memes, and destiny.
Right. So who wants to start us off on this little quest?
Alright, I'll go first, or we might as well start by talking about the Batman himself.
Mr.
So-
Batman.
The King's Crusader.
Yes. So, in the 1989 Batman and the Dark Knight Batman, we see two different people. In the 1989 Batman, he's willing to kill people. He doesn't really speak a lot. He doesn't have a lot of character development, and he has like a classical style to him. Whereas in the Dark Knight, he doesn't kill people. He speaks more. There's more character development, and it's darker. So, for instance, in the 1989 Batman, he's just a guy with a suit, and he kills people because he wants to save Gotham. But in the Dark Knight, he has a backstory to him that we see, and there's also in Batman Begins, we see the start of the story of Batman. So we see his origins, how he got the suit, and in the Dark Knight, it progresses it further. So we see him and his moral code being tested more by the Joker. So he doesn't want to kill people, but how far will he go so he doesn't kill people? And I feel this is better because it gives us something to relate to more. What are you shaking your head at?
No, I'm just messing with you.
All right, Paul.
I think the fact that there's more character development for Bruce Wayne or Batman in The Dark Knight is partially because they had it planned out as a trilogy to begin with. Like you said, there was Batman Begins beforehand, and then there was Bane Rises, the last film. But yeah, the killing people in terms of production context is very interesting. Because throughout the one thing we took a lot of notes of, throughout everything in it, is that it's a lot more black and white. Okay, we're sorry for the interruption there. One thing I'd say, in the original Batman, the 89 one, it's a lot more black and white, like morality, whereas the Dark Knight's it's obvious it's a Christopher Nolan film as well, because it's really looking into philosophy. So a big deal is made out of the fact that he doesn't kill people in that one. But in the 80s, I think it was more acceptable to have films that just reflected the comic books more, and weren't trying to be realistic or more philosophical. So, yeah.
All right, yeah. Do you want to talk about something, Ben?
Sure. The women of the two movies, Vicky Vale and Rachel Dawes.
Dawes. It's
What?
Rachel Dawes.
Is it Dawes?
Rachel Dawes.
Dawes.
Rachel Dawes.
Rachel Dawes.
Is it? Oh, Dawes. Yeah, Rachel Dawes. They're kind of somewhat similar and different at the same time. At the end of Batman 1989, Vicky Vale is sort of seen as the damsel in distress at the end, who needs sort of saving by Batman. But in The Dark Knight, Rachel Dawes is, as much as she's in trouble and in need of saving at the end, she's seen on sort of equal levels with a male character who also needs saving. Harvey Dent is in fact the one that's saved by Batman in the end. So it's kind of seen as Rachel Dawes is not just this sort of damsel in distress anymore. She's very equal to the other characters in the movie.
It's a more progressive film because it's a more modern film.
Which is
Yes,
a lot more
definitely.
involved in the plot, rather than just being there as a trophy.
Batman doesn't get her at the end.
Yeah. It's like it
It's
leads
not
you.
like that all
The
true.
film leads you to believe that Batman's gonna get Rachel at the end, but he doesn't.
He doesn't. She's no Kim Basinger. Kim Basinger.
Yeah.
Kim Basinger.
He's no Kine Basinger. Right.
Batman doesn't just go, oh, this woman, she needs saving, so let's save her. Instead, he thinks about who's actually sort of useful, I guess,
Yeah.
and goes with Harvey Dent because he's meant to be sort of the saviour of Gotham.
There's the one scene where he does kind of save her when like the Joker throws her out the window.
Yeah.
But that's only because she stood up to the Joker
Yeah.
as well.
And she was
Which
the only one that actually needed saving at the time, really, because she was
Yeah.
getting thrown out the window, and everyone else was fine.
Whereas Kim Basinger is a lot more passive in the original Batman.
Yeah.
Like I believe when they're in the diner, you know, when the Joker confronts her there, she's just kind of like, oh, okay.
Although she does.
She's practically like passed out in his arms, like
Mm.
at the end.
Although neither of them actually. I guess Vicky Vale in 1989 isn't entirely seen as just sort of the woman who needs saving, though. She does like. I mean, she doesn't really talk to any females. Along the same with Rachel Dawes.
Fails the Bechdel test.
So she talks with a lot of men and is kind of seen kind of higher than one of the reporters at the place she works at in 1989.
Yeah.
She's kind of seen above him in a way.
All right.
It's interesting how the police are shown in the both the films as well. In the original one, they're just kind of the good guys. There's a crooked cop, I think. A couple corrupt cops, but you know they're just kind of henchmen, good henchmen. Whereas the Joker has his bad henchmen as well, obviously. Whereas in the Dark Knight, they come across as a lot more militarized, and there's a lot of crooked cops, and they do horrible things. They're kind of responsible for a lot of the stuff that happens. It's more of the morality kind of thing that Nolan likes to do, and that I think is more common in modern films. But it's also, I think, a reflection of how we see the police nowadays. That they're more untrustworthy and more of a threat.
It's like,
or at least that's how they're portrayed a lot of the time.
It's like a pre 9/11, post 9/11 thing.
It
So
is.
in the '89 Batman, you see that there's like one or two crooked cops, but they're just genuinely your average Joe. But in the Dark Knight, there's a lot more like crookedness involved, and you can't really trust them. Much like how people started to trust in the police less and less post 9/11.
And there's a lot of allegories for terrorism as well, in the way the Joker in The Dark Knight does his evil deeds. There's a lot of blowing up of buildings. There's a lot of more Machiavellian plans, whereas like the original 1989 Jack Nicholson Joker, he's a lot more straightforward, really, isn't he? He just does what he does. But like even like the bank heist at the beginning, that's it's a lot more realistic. And it links into how 9/11 kind of has these images in people's heads now of more realistic terrorist kind of violence.
Talking about Gotham City in both the films, in the 1989 Batman, Gotham is a lot of it like a dirtier place. It's emptier, so there's less things, and it'll also go back to when they had less things to work with, I suppose. And it's depicted to be more fantasy-like, whereas in The Dark Knight it's a more realistic city, and there's more things. It's filled more. It's a lot darker and grittier as well. And also when you're watching the films, you get some vibes of other films. So you can compare the Gothams to like the city in Blade Runner, because that's also like a kind of grim place. And the Joker,
Like sci-fi was pretty big back then.
yeah, and the Joker, especially in the '89 Batman, gives off vibes. It's like kind of similar to Beetlejuice. And another thing is like the bat signal, which also it correlates with pre-9/11, post-9/11 as well. So in the 1989 Batman, the bat signal is like really clear in the sky. It's like nice, like light and happy. But in the Dark Knight, it's a lot cloudier and darker. So it symbolizes like bad things in a way.
Yeah. Bad things.
Bad things.
I guess it's kind of
Bad
like
thing.
in 989, the bat signal sort of seems more of a lot more of a sign of hope for people in Gotham, while in Dark Knight it's more cloudier appearance. It kind of makes it seem as if Batman isn't really that large of a threat to the villains anymore. He's especially against the Joker. You know, the Joker takes quite a lot of advantage over him.
It shows that he's a lot less like clear-cut superhero as well, compared to the 80s. Where it's kind of good and bad. It's like all the action films in the 80s, like all the Schwarzenegger blockbusters and stuff. And you'd often just have good guys and bad guys. Like, in The Terminator. Oh, yeah, Terminator. Good timing.
Pointing
Didn't even notice that.
out there.
But yeah, in The
Assist.
Terminator, Arnie, the Terminator is definitely the bad guy. Like, there's no doubt there, because it's kind of an 80s film. Whereas in the 2008 era, the heroes were less clear cut. You weren't just going to have like Sarah Connor versus the Terminator. You'd have Batman, who also does lots of horrible things, with Harvey Dent, who obviously is a kind of immoral. Well, he's a good character turned bad, and the Joker, who's just awful.
The tech between the two movies, in 1989, Batman in
Oh no!
oh no
Oh no! Oh dear!
Things are dropping.
I'll start that again. In Batman 1989, the technology and its design, Batman's suit itself and his Batmobile are all a lot more sleeker and I guess cooler. I guess what they're meant to be. Batman's meant to seem as this sort of idol, I guess, for maybe kids of the time, and the sort of the Batmobiles are meant to be seem like this like sort of really fast car, this really sleek fast car.
It's like very exaggerated, like the design of it.
Well,
It doesn't look
points
like
and-
it's ready for military combat.
Yeah.
Like everyone.
It's kind of just, it definitely doesn't look like it's made to withstand any attack, other than when it has it has a separate sort of shield that Batman activates.
Yeah. It doesn't look like it could like drive around or anything with that one. Though.
No,
It just kind of hunkers down,
It's
and you get
all
the
eyeball.
old-fashioned stop. Like, it's not even stop motion, I think, is it? It's just reversed footage, isn't it?
no.
It's ridiculous. But yeah, sorry. I just thought that effect looked really bad nowadays.
It does look a bit, it definitely does look bad compared to today's standards. Hasn't held up, but it's definitely not. Batman seems to not be able to sort of drive around in it while being protected at the same time necessarily. Especially that's kind of shown when Batman remotely controls the Batmobile, blowing up this factory that the Joker owns at the time. I guess it's not protective enough for him to be in there to take the chance of possibly getting crushed in the car while through the exploding factory.
Yeah, but imagine in the newer car, it just drive right through.
Yeah, the Tumbler is a lot more militarized. It's a lot more like a tank or an APC. seems it's a lot more armoured and protective compared to the supercar of 1989. Batman's suit itself is also a lot more military-esque, I guess, especially after it's shown that his previous suit is just not good, really, anymore.
I think it links to all the post 9/11 stuff as well. But, like, the equipment seems a lot more functional in the newer films.
Yeah, it's kind of presenting the idea that Batman isn't this immortal god, really.
No.
He's a person in a suit of armor, or some suit. He's vulnerable to attacks. He can very much die, and so he needs that protection to keep him safe.
Yeah, like in the 1989 film, he just he gets shot a few times, and it's just like, oh, he's wearing body armor. That's why he's able to survive those bullets.
Yeah.
It's like
it's a special material in the Dark Knight, because it's like, I think they expect audiences to be a bit more educated about that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, they know that that's just a cliche. Probably because we've seen more like violence, like in the news media and stuff like that. So we know like that. We know how damaging bullets can be a bit more nowadays than perhaps in the 80s. So basically, we apologise for any music, right?
Yeah.
It's not us, it's people upstairs doing stuff.
Yeah.
Playing music.
That can't be helped. It's not intentional background music to add to the ambience.
No.
That might help.
Or anyway, Mark.
What?
Good versus evil.
Talking about
Tell us
representation,
about that.
good versus evil.
I think I already talked about that one.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, I did actually.
Do it again.
One thing I will add that right. So, one thing I'll say is it's also noteworthy that the old film is very good versus evil, whereas the new film is order versus chaos. I think it shows that as a society, we the good versus evil kind of stereotype has been worn out a lot in the media, especially in film. So it's a more interesting take to look at order versus chaos rather than just two moral extremes going against each other. It's kind of two shades of grey, although the Joker's a bit darker than just a shade of grey, but whatever.
It's 1 up to 50.
It's more like pitch black.
He's quite pitch black. So yeah, that's
1989 is...
One thing I should also talk about as well. Advertising, guys.
All over the place.
There was a lot more advertising, I thought, in the 1980s. In the 1980s Batman film, and that's important because it's kind of the greed is good culture as it was known. Apparently,
Who knows?
a lot. There were a lot more like yuppies around in the 80s. That was a big thing. Yuppie culture, kind of Del Boy characters from Only Fools, and yeah, because of that, a lot was kind of placed on businesses. I think it was kind of a big boom era as well, really, for technology and the kind of the Western economies in terms of what they were producing as well. So it's not surprising that films from the 1980s have a hell of a lot of product placement and advertising in them. And I think there was quite a bit in the 1989 Batman.
Mm-hmm.
Not as much as some other films, but...
Like a prime example of advertising in the 80s is the Reese's Pieces in E.T.
Bloody E.T.
Yeah. Said they were going to use M&M's, but M&M's were like, no, because your film's going to be crap. But then Reese's, who were about to go bankrupt at the time, were like, yeah, we'll do it.
Might as well.
Ghostbusters,
Yes.
Stay Puff Marshmallow Man,
Yes.
all that stuff. Although I'm presuming that's a real product.
Probably.
There was, at any rate, in the second Ghostbusters, or is it the first one? They use a Nintendo controller to control something in the second one. That's like part of the MacGuffins they use to win the day over in the end. I think it was the second one because I don't remember it very well.
Fun fact: NES, 1985.
80s, 1980s, retro on the go.
Yeah.
The Game Boy.
But yeah, there was a lot less. I think the only product placement that people noticed in the Dark Knight was the Lamborghini.
Yeah.
But that's also a character thing.
And there was.
Lamborghini Murcielago.
And later on, there's like an advert for Dark Knight Rises with the Mountain Dew.
Oh yeah.
It's like everyone's fighting, and it's just like cuts to a random guy drinking Mountain Dew.
Yeah, but fortunately, we can ignore that because we're doing the Dark Knight. So we'll pretend that didn't happen. But anyway, they use they use brands more like films and everything for advertising outside of the film itself nowadays. But I think the 80s was a lot more blatant, like putting products in films and everything.
And they use it well in The Dark Knight. It's just like you'd
Yeah, they do.
expect Bruce Wayne to drive a Lamborghini.
You would. It suits Batman to have a bat car. Like even just as his normal car. For Bruce Wayne even.
Alright, and talking about the score now, the music. So, the music in the 1989 Batman was done by Danny Elfman, and the music in The Dark Knight was done by Hans Zimmer.
Ooh!
Hans.
Hans!
Anyway,
Green.
Hans Zimmer.
Yeah.
Hans.
Hans Zimmer.
They're kind of similar in some ways, in that they're both more orchestral. Like one thing I'd say in terms of production context that you can't really see through these films is it's a lot more common nowadays for films to use like actual songs, like pop music or rock music or hip hop or R&B or other things like that. Like Suicide Squad, for example, that used a lot of pop music.
Ruined Bohemian Rhapsody.
Ruined Bohemian Rhapsody. Rip Bohemian Rhapsody.
Rip Bohemian.
Shout outs to Freddie Mercury.
Shout to Queen.
Shout out to Ray Romano.
Shout out to Ray Romano.
But yeah, it's a lot more common. Whereas there's not really that many 80s films I can think of that didn't use like scores actually written for the film.
Well, they all did really. Like Back to the Future did.
Oh yeah.
Ghostbusters did.
Like you've got the classic John Williams, like Star Wars music and all that stuff. It's very good.
And like when you look at the music in both films, like how they are in the '89 Batman, it's a lot lighter, a lot more joyous, I suppose. But in the Dark Knight, it's a lot darker and a lot more subtle.
Yeah, it's definitely more subtle in the Dark Knight. It's I believe Hans Zimmer did the Inception soundtrack as well, didn't they?
Probably.
And they're quite similar. Probably he does most things really.
He does.
Danny Elfman's has a lot more flourish to it, I think. Like it's gothic, but it's like overly gothic. It's very stylized. Whereas Hans Zimmer is more like an action film kind of score, which shows how like superhero films certainly have changed since the 80s. And I mean, this Batman, the Tim Burton Batman film kind of started that off, but nowadays, like Guardians of the Galaxy is the most jokey kind of superhero film around at the moment. And even then, that's got very serious moments that are kind of grounded in reality. But you didn't really get that until this first Batman film.
Right. Talking about the Joker himself.
Yee.
Yee.
In Batman 989, the Joker is more of a villain with like a goal or just sort of he wants control, I guess. Really,
He wants to rule Gotham,
He's
not
got-
the world.
he's
but
got, like,
Gotham.
just
A
Gotham.
more generic motive.
It's like
Yeah.
typical supervillain kind of.
I want to rule the world.
I mean, but compared to Heath Ledger's Joker, Heath is plays more of a he doesn't necessarily have a goal in mind. He just wants to create chaos.
Yeah, it's like he's not really a villain. He's a terrorist.
Yeah, he is a terrorist, specifically considering he blows up a hospital in the movie. But yeah, it's post 9/11, so he's seen as more as a terrorist. Joker in Dark Knight is very post 9/11. He's considered a terrorist, very pictured as a terrorist. He blows up a hospital.
It's an agent of chaos, is what he says. Which is pretty cute.
He calls himself that, an agent of chaos, because that's all he's trying to cause. He's very tied to the Batman. He just wants to make the Batman's life hell and just cause chaos for Gotham.
It's like superhero films aren't just for kids anymore. You've got full-on terrorists.
Yeah,
in the form of the Joker.
He's quite dark.
Like the mafia goons who the Joker kind of deals with in the Dark Knight. They're kind of more like the kind of characters that the Joker was with anyway, was working with in the original Batman films. It kind of shows how much violence has progressed in the media since 1989.
Also, Rip Bob from 89 Batman. Rip Bob.
Rip Bob from Fight Club.
Shout out to Bob.
Shout out to Bob from Fight Club.
Shout out to Meatloaf.
Shout out to Meatloaf. Rest in peace, Meatloaf.
He's not actually dead.
I know.
But rest in peace.
Rest in peace, Meatloaf. Shout outs to Meatloaf and Ray Romano. Rest in peace, Ray Romano.
Rest in meat. Love.
In 1989, sort of the Joker, he sort of plays around really. I mean, there's that scene where it's the gallery type thing, the art gallery.
Yeah, where
and they start just painting over the paints and chucking paint all over them.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, but you wouldn't find that in the Dark Knight because it takes away from the realistic tone that's like throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, the Joker.
The Joker is a lot more menacing. Like in the Hans Zimmer score, every time the Joker's on screen, you can hear them like screeching noise a little.
Also, did you say Hans Zimmer?
Hans Zimmer.
Like you said,
Shout out to Hans Zimmer down.
Simmer down.
But yeah, you hear that sound effect every time the Joker's on screen, and it's really unsettling. It's more like a horror villain kind of trope in terms of the music.
Yeah.
But 1989 Joker is just like he's bouncing off the walls. It's just Jack Nicholson playing a crazy character.
He's a homicide artist, as he calls himself.
He's a homicide artist.
Not saying that Jack Nicholson's Joker is not insane in 1989, but Dark Knight's Heath Ledger Joker is a lot more insane.
Takes it to a whole new level.
He's purely insane terrorist, which is quite it's not exactly a happy mix. Let's just be honest.
It's
quite a terrifying mix.
Yeah, it's a lot more realistic in terms of like mental health in that regard as well.
And it all links back to the pre-9/11, post-9/11.
Yeah, but like the Joker in 1989 is more like Jack Nicholson, like ooh, I'm crazy. Not quite One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, more cuckoo than that. Whereas in 2008, yeah, the Joker's like a terrorist, which is kind of a new mental illness you'd find in society.
There's a lot of
he's actually unsettlingly psychotic more than just madman, which is more it's more accurate, which I think you find a lot in more modern films. So they're more accurate to mental health, that kind of thing.
It's like there's other depictions of mental health as well, in The Dark Knight especially. Like
Harvey Dent.
Yeah, like when Harvey Dent's torturing that guy who's a nervous schizophrenic. It just, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that they include that.
Like a game of power.
And Harvey Dent himself goes mad.
Yeah.
But it's from an excessive amount of torture.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, and getting part of his body burned off and losing his loved one. But in 1989 Batman, the Joker just goes crazy because he gets dipped in some acid, which makes him go mad, because madness back then wasn't really regarded as a proper kind of psychological issue, whereas it is now.
Heath
Yeah.
Ledger's Joker is also he's trying to. He has this. He doesn't want anyone to really know exactly who he is, other than just the Joker, because he keeps
saying
changing his origin story.
how he got these scars.
But also, it stays the sort of the same subject of how he got the scars on his face. Also, there's when the police when they catch him, the Joker, for the first time, the police sort of find nothing on him, nothing based on his fingerprints or anything when they check him out, showing that he doesn't have this alter ego. He is just the Joker. That's all he is. This is the end of the podcast now. I've been Ben.
I've Nathan.
Mark.
Bye.
Goodbye.